Right, Jack. Jack Lawrence. Why don't you tell me about Jack Lawrence before he joins? And we can pretend that we planned to do like a little intro.
Sure. No, I think we should carry on talking about Jack as if he's not there when he joins. So yeah, Jack's really interesting because in the early days of TikTok, there were very few people doing philosophy stuff, and Jack was one of them. And he was doing it brilliantly. And he had this format which worked really well, where he was talking to his sort of shadow self. And I think that was what he called them, shadow conversations. So he would have these conversations about, free will, for example, and you'd see two people, one sort of light and one dark, playing out the conversation. And I think he amassed approaching kind of like 1 million followers. And they were scripted, they were really kind of thoughtful. And I really liked that he was getting a generation of people on TikTok to engage with philosophy in a way which wasn't kind of stuffy and old-fashioned. Do you know what I mean? Like, I still see people on TikTok from my generation who, I bloody hate it. They're lecturing. And sometimes I find myself doing it as well. It's like, you talk about the topic to the camera. And I like the format and I like what he was doing. And I stitched a couple of things and commented on a few things. And he responded to a couple of things. And then, we ended up meeting up on a few occasions. So he's become a friend. I think we probably met sort of 5 or 6 times, gone out for kind of drinks. He also has a YouTube channel. He's working really interesting. He studied philosophy of physics at Oxford and did a master's in that. So obviously kind of super smart as well. Working in, I think, computing as effectively a kind of a salesperson. So he's not just like sitting at home in his underpants type philosopher, but also experiencing, I think, probably what you and I experience, which is the ridiculousness of having these big ideas on the one hand, but also the practicality of having to kind of sell stuff for an organization.
Yeah.
And I think he's sort of reached the point where he's probably sort of thinking about how do you monetize that, as we all do. It's like, okay, so I love this stuff. How do I actually turn this into a living? And I think he was writing a book at one point, and I've seen he started popping up on other people's podcasts quite a lot. He's kind of like the people's philosopher, and he's a nice guy. Doesn't give himself sort of airs and graces. And what else? Oh yeah, the most recent thing I saw was somebody interviewed him for a magazine. I can't remember which magazine it was, but we could ask him about it. And then wrote an article. And the title of the article was Andrew Tate's Worst Nightmare. So it's like, and then he did a TikTok saying, like joking slightly, I'm not sure that, basically Andrew Tate would even know who I am, but pretty sure I'm not his worst nightmare. But the idea is, should we as philosophers kind of role model the right, not even just not philosophers, or should men take the lead in role modeling better behaviors, I think, for young men? And I think that's an interesting kind of thing to try and do as well,
Powerful introduction. Yeah.
Well, there's a few things in there that
we could talk about. Yeah. Let's just see where it goes.
How about you? What's going on in your life at the moment?
What's going on? Loads of stuff. Family life, good. We're thinking maybe moving to Brighton. We'll see how we go. Maybe upgrading the size of the property that we live in. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a kind of a 4-bed, but we split one room into 2, and we've got 2 kids, and they're ancient eaters. But I mean, they're like, as soon as they get to an age where they actually want a bit of space. Issue: Jack Lawrence's mic and cam already in use. Ask them to close all apps and tabs. Okay, maybe he'll figure that out. He's a smart dude. He went to Oxford. And then work-wise, we're just insanely busy at the moment. So I'm juggling a few things. We've got someone leaving at the end of November. It's my first leaver ever. So I'm a bit sad about that.
Who's leaving?
Adele. Nothing that, thankfully, nothing that I've done really.
Not this time.
Not this time, at least. So yeah, I understand it. So it's kind of, I'm fine emotionally. I'm kind of fine and supportive and happy for Adele because it's the right decision. It's just a bit sad because love her.
Yeah, it is tough, but didn't somebody else from your team, I've forgotten her name, join Kenny at some
Rochelle.
point? Rochelle.
Yeah. She was,
Yeah.
she was also awesome. So track record of hiring good people is pretty good. There he
That
is.
is, hey, Jack, you figured it out. Yeah, no
How many
worries.
takes? That's the start. Sorry, I'm late, guys. I really do apologize.
No.
All good. We were just talking about you.
Because no
Yeah.
audio. Spare.
Yeah, it seems to be working.
I don't want to put on the headset. Sorry, I'll shut up for a second.
All good.
Yeah.
Take
But
your
that
time.
is one of the tough things, I think, about having a team is you sort of build a team and then you watch people go on to, better things if you're a good leader. And that's kind of like it's one thing to talk about it in the abstract. It's another to kind of actually experience it, lose people, it is tough. And you want to, at one level, intellectually, you congratulate them and that's success because that's what you're there to do. But at the other level, you're like, oh, let's start all over again.
Yeah. Well, I'm also like becoming more and more confident that capability and I suppose quality in the work that we do as consultants isn't necessarily predicated on, let's say, traditional stuff that you might look for. So when I'm speaking to someone and I can see that they're kind of autonomous, confident enough to kind of challenge and I suppose lead on their own, because that's ultimately what I need is someone who's running this business. It's people that can, go, this is the problem we've got. I'm going to I'll pick this up. I'll do what I think is best. I'll check in with you when I need to, but ultimately just don't worry about it kind of thing. And I can see that. Hi, Jack. You're back.
You hear me? I'm so sorry. That took so long.
That's all good.
Oh, no
I got
worries.
a few notifications saying your mic and cam was already in use. And it says, what should I do? But I didn't click on it.
It's because of your popularity, Jack. You're just being filmed at all times. You're on several podcasts concurrently. So.
Yeah. It's a live stream, actually. People pay an enormous amount of money to watch me sleep. It's great. I've reached out to all of
Living a dream.
Yeah. Really.
Yeah.
So,
I would love that. I don't know if I would actually. I said that out of turn. I think the idea that you just, because I know I don't do live, don't watch live streams. I kind of don't get them, but I can see that people are making money somehow from it. But the idea that I would just be doing me, there's probably something profoundly existential about that. And that you just get paid for people observing you being you. I think that's just mind boggling.
yeah, I think I get sick of myself pretty quickly. I don't know. It's bizarre. These people do like, Hassan or Destiny stream 8 hours a day or whatever. Just, I don't think I could have the stamina for that.
I follow a guy who does Total War. I don't know if you've ever played that game.
Yeah, I used to play it back in the day.
Yeah, Total War. Medieval 2 is my favorite one. So he does that, and I quite happily watch him do that. It's pretty funny. I don't. As I said in the WhatsApp before we joined, I've kind of deleted TikTok, so I have no access to that anymore.
No
and I don't
shame.
understand like the different emojis. This is I'm showing how old I am. Don't understand the different emojis that you can give people. Like you can give people like cherries and stuff. Is that like money?
Oh, on the TikTok live stream, I don't really dip my toes into that much either.
No.
I got to say, I think there's, as far as I can understand, some sort of reward, and sometimes you can give money through that, but it's not something I do. I think you can also do something which applies a filter on their face briefly for everyone else watching, and so you sometimes have these odd moments where someone's trying to have a very serious discussion, and someone puts like a moustache on the person's face. Yeah, so it's just the weird age we live in.
Yeah, but why, Charlie? Didn't you do Movember? I remember. Didn't you used to do Movember? Or somebody used to.
No, I didn't do Movember.
Yeah.
I think it was maybe Redmond did Movember. I can't remember. We're talking about people that you don't know, Jack. But yeah, I mean,
That's cool.
it's I never managed to. Well, I think my wife. I've been with my wife pretty much since university now. Well, since university, so she has quite a fixed control over what I wear and look like.
It's probably for the best, though, right?
It's for the best.
That's ideal,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So she bought me some. She'll go out to the shop and buy me some new jeans and go, wear these. Your jeans have holes in and they're covered in yogurt. So yeah, she controls all of that. She controls
Do you
my
not
face.
worry that you've sort of turned her into your mum by what you're doing?
Yeah, I do worry about that.
Will I take any action? No. Don't you
Well,
worry.
well, it's
I do the first step, which is the most important one.
Yeah, the
I have
self-awareness
concerns.
is the
Yeah.
first step.
Yeah.
But I would say that my mum didn't dress me, but so very well. So she's not really my mum at all. She's just helping me.
That's such a
Get
good
free
comeback. My mum didn't dress me, so she can't be.
My mum can't
My mum-
cook and is the least fashionable person. So you know.
I also like the self-awareness as the get out, as the classic intellectualization. It's like, I'm aware that I'm an annoyance or a twit, but so that's fine. That's as far as I need to go.
Yeah.
I do that a lot, by the way. It helps
Oh,
me
me too.
stay
Yeah. To be clear, pot calling the kettle black in this case. So.
And you're doing No Niche November, aren't you?
Yeah. No, I basically wrote a long list of ideas I want to make, and I have next week off work where I'm just gonna probably make some dumb videos. I don't know. I felt like the need to declare that I might go off-brand, as hateful as it is to say that. But it was also just a dumb joke. I thought of it and I went, "Oh, that's quite funny." So hence, yeah.
Do you worry about going off-brand?
Not really. I think my livelihood doesn't depend on audience capture or anything like that. So I think I'm in a luxurious position in that way. But there is also a sense in which I think there's a tacit agreement or promise when if you follow someone and they make videos around a certain topic or in a certain style, and then you break that expectation, even though it's not like you owe them a refund or whatever, I wouldn't begrudge someone for going, this is a break in expectations. I don't want to watch this person anymore. And insofar as having an audience is valuable, and I'm obviously very flattered that people take the time to watch my things, I don't want to break that agreement without context, I guess, in the sense of, this is going to be a brief interlude from your regularly scheduled programming as opposed to we're never going back. So
yeah.
I do find that a little bit annoying though. When I follow a newsletter of someone who's like extremely has a followership of like 10 people, and then they're one of their newsletters because they have a bit of a break is, I'm so sorry, I haven't posted a newsletter in the last 2 weeks. It's like, nobody cares.
Yeah, no one's noticed. No one's
noticed. It's fine. But I suppose, it makes sense. But Nick was telling me about your journey. I suppose one of the questions that came to mind is, have you got like something like 1 million followers or something, Jack, on TikTok?
I've got sort of 860 odd thousand on TikTok, and then a handful on YouTube and Instagram. So approaching that number. I haven't broken the number yet.
Yeah. So you're a quote unquote influencer. What does a quote unquote philosopher influencer get in from like brands? You get like merch sent to you, and
that's actually really funny. I was thinking about this is one of the videos I was actually thinking about making, which is all the different things I get asked to advertise. This is a fantastic opportunity.
What have you got?
Let me get through. I get very strange emails. So let's see. Most recently so this is from yesterday. So I got someone from an AI-powered thinking space for students, researchers, and knowledge workers, and basically saying, if we want to launch this product in November, we're looking for a short form video on this. No mention of budget or anything like that. They never do it. Apparently by doing this, I'll get a free pro account on the system. So that's pretty good.
Wow.
On the 3rd of November, someone who wants me to, this was very funny, actually. Someone wants me to advertise, I won't say the name because begrudge it, but an air conditioner, which won apparently some award. And the collaboration was like this video and everything like that. But they said, you won't get the air conditioner. We'll just give you some information on it. Which I just went, okay, this is peculiar.
Cheers, guys.
So let's see what else. A lot of I think because I've made a few videos about AI, just some bots had picked up that. So more AI tools. The funniest one I got, which was probably about a year ago now, I got someone wanted me to advertise Aztec death whistles on some like market website.
Can we brainstorm you combining the air conditioner and the Aztec death whistle?
So quiet that you can still hear your Aztec death whistle.
Are you an overthinker? Do you get overheated? You need.
All that thinking making you sweat? No longer. I assume if you have a more commoditized niche, so if you do sneakers or fashion, I imagine the advertisements are much more suitable. But
yeah, I do. I think that's a big turn off, though, isn't it? If you're used to watching somebody who's just kind of authentically posting, and then suddenly there's a trainer in the background that's like, "Oh, have you noticed this?" sort of thing. So
I've seen lots of people try it, and almost nobody seems to get it right, because I think audiences are quite canny. They can tell when you're trying to sell something. That's why people hate LinkedIn, I think. Because it's like everybody's trying to sell everything all the time, not least themselves. And, I think that just people have become super sensitive to that.
You're right. I've only seen a handful of TikTok ads that I think have really nailed it and have managed to be entertaining and decent pieces of content in their own right. And usually it's been because they've been so bizarre and just absurd that people sort of lent into it and gone, all right, fair enough. This was amusing. But outside of that, very difficult. Yeah.
Anything that's like, do your children watch too much TV? Then buy this toy. It's hours of fun.
Yeah.
I'm like,
do you have this problem?
Order that.
We have this solution.
Yeah. I've ordered all sorts of crap on.
I do like that I've sort of forced you to do something out of your comfort zone, Charlie. I take a perverse delight in doing that. So yeah, hopefully you'll get addicted to TikTok and it will.
Oh, you forced him to download it? Nice.
Yeah.
Well,
to watch your TikToks, I think, probably.
Yeah, exactly. So I did.
You suffering through that, man.
Download it briefly and then uninstalled it almost immediately afterwards. I also downloaded Instagram as well because my wife keeps sending me stuff and I'm like, can't access it.
Oh yeah, you mean Reels? Yeah.
And then
you're such a boomer, Charlie. Though with this can't hold with this social media nonsense. It's a complete waste of time.
No, I don't know. I just think it's so horribly negative all the time. Plus, I'm interested in the stuff that attracts that kind of negativity. So I'm interested in things like politics and history, and what it does is then feed me, I don't know, Great Britain rule Britannia 59 with a, Great British flag and a lion on the front. And it's just like all this factual inaccuracy about the British Empire and how great it was. And then I comment on it because I'm like, this is all incorrect. And then he just goes, have some more. And I'm like, no. And then
you're baited.
Yeah. The first time I ended up going down that road, it was because I started getting interested in like Scottish independence and Irish and Welsh independence and the sort of, I'm just interested in, British history, I suppose, from that perspective. And having commented on it a few, I just got taken down a dark path, basically. And I was like, right, this has to go, start again. And then I tried to follow, because Nick, I was inspired by, the comments you make about TikTok and how helpful it is from a educational, well, not educational, but like learning and stuff. But I always seem to get dragged in because I just get so angry with all of the bullshit. So
that's good self-awareness, though. That you see yourself reacting viscerally. Because I think a lot of people don't recognize how angry it makes them. And they've had it for so long that they think this is just their normal state. And actually, if they unplug for a bit, they probably feel a bit better.
There's a marvelous book called Grandstanding, The Use and Abuse of Moral Talk, which summarizes a lot of the research. And there's a particular piece of research, which I quote often, stuck with me, which is they did an experiment in which people were given articles, basically, which outraged them. And then they were given the option of reading something which agreed with their view or something which outraged them further. And disproportionately, they chose to read for more outraging material. So the algorithm knows this, and the algorithm is designed to outrage you because that's what grabs your attention. If it's much better to actually show you something that you're absolutely incensed by, even if that's manufactured, as increasingly it is, because then you feel compelled to interact or respond or whatever. It's quite cynical because it just massively polarizes people through that process.
Yeah. So on that basis, would you say social media is a net positive or net negative?
Is this directed to me, Nick, or both?
Both.
I mean, hard, right? The scientist in me says, well, we don't have a version of Earth where social media wasn't invented, so we don't have any control for this. I think social media in the early days was probably a net positive in that it was just a more elaborate way of keeping in touch with people. I think social media is no longer social media. It's just media. It's algorithmically selective media. And so if you look at the early days of MySpace or Facebook, I think that was probably a fairly positive thing. It was a way of creating events and meeting up with people in real life or staying in touch with relatives from far away. And you saw photos of people you knew or had met and wanted to look and learn about. Whereas nowadays, I think it's a very different beast where the vast majority of things you consume are meant for consumption by strangers, or they're recycled clips from traditional media. I mean, you see anything from late night US talk shows, a huge amount of their views now come from YouTube or posting clips on TikTok. And you see Jon Stewart being very funny and very witty, but he's getting millions of views on YouTube. So I think in its current form, most people agree it's harmful. A hot take is that a lot of this harm could be mitigated if we got rid of the personalized algorithmic element, whereby it couldn't be such that you could get a machine to decide what you wanted to watch. You'd have to search out yourself. But yeah, I think it's not necessarily a net negative, but right now I think in its current form, probably. I think you can see it's at least within democratic societies, it's causing a lot of issues. That's how I would frame it.
Yeah, interesting question. I like to contrast it, as I often do, with libraries. Because fundamentally, I'm not sure that they're different. The mechanics of it is a library a bad thing? Because instinctively you want to say yes, and then you say, well, why do I want to say yes? That library is a good thing and social media is bad? Because the same dynamic plays out. You can waste time in a library. A library might be a bad thing if it's stocked entirely with books which represent extreme kind of viewpoints. But ultimately, you have a responsibility, I think, to decide, what course to take. And that's what doesn't happen. Generally, people lose control, in a sense, I think, of their feed. And so I think it can be a good thing, social media, but only if you're very active in, as you say, you have that degree of self-awareness in steering and curating your feed. And so I think that the toxicity, which inevitably is in there, is probably a little bit deeper, which is it's something to do with selling and money and technology itself, which is constantly sort of trying to grab control away from you. And I think that's the problematic thing, which is you have a life to lead and you have certain interests and whatever, but increasingly we talk about the algorithm as if it's God, but it's sort of wresting that control from you and pointing your thoughts and your time in somebody else's direction, and I think that's the bad thing. What do you think?
So shut it all down.
Well, people do joke that
Yeah.
we should just hit the big reset button, and the idea of harnessing human attention as a sort of resource and commodifying it is kind of horrifying itself. So
I do wonder if, to your point about monetizing it, more outraged people buy more stuff. Is that, I suppose, it's the advertising revenue that you get from people just looking because they're outraged. So you're looking at something that really upsets you, and then they're like, here, buy this lawnmower. And then here's another outrageous post.
These outrageous prices. Yeah, you basically got three.
Feeling angry?
Yeah. Feeling angry. Spend some money. You got 3 paths to monetization online. Pretty much, you got money from just the views, which is what the platform pays you as a sort of thank you for directing people to ads on our platform in general. You've got sponsored posts, so the kind of things that I get pitched and anyone else does. Past a certain point, depending on your niche, or you use it as a sales funnel yourself for your own product or service, be that book or coaching or your own platform or what have you. And so, there's always, as far as I'm aware, there's pretty much only 3 paths. Then there's, I guess, you can try and get patrons or sponsorships from the audience itself, but that's kind of ultimately the conversion. I think, Nick, you'd know more about this than I would, but I imagine if someone's stirred up into an emotional state, they might be easier to influence.
Well, it's true. I feel I have some ambivalence about this because I do make use of kind of outrage on LinkedIn, which is kind of sad thing to say.
I've learned the ways from TikTok and I've reapplied to another ecosystem.
Oh, man, this is even worse than that. I've started posting bits and bobs, or other people have, from TikTok on LinkedIn, which I'm sort of horrified and delighted by in equal measure. But I think that there is, in answer to kind of your question, lest we go off at a tangent, there is some value in it, in that I like conversation. So the people who are challenged by what I say are unlikely to change their point of view. But for many people, it provokes deeper engagement with the topic. And the side effect of it from a memory perspective is the outrage sticks with people. So people think of you, people know you, and I think there's just a salience aspect of it, which I know, because we all do this. We do some kind of marketing where people then want to work with you because you're the person that they've seen popping up in their feed, so often. So it's like, I just don't think you should do it gratuitously. I think that's my salvation, which is it should be something that you actually profoundly feel. You're not just being outrageous for the sake of outrageous. So I know some people who do that on LinkedIn, and they just like make these outrageous posts which are just gratuitously, provocative, and I think that's deplorable. I think you should actually care about stuff.
So your
it's like a golden ratio.
Democracy is a waste of time is the one you've been doing recently, right? So
I kind of hate that people like that. I
wanted it to anger people, and everyone agreed with me. Damn it.
Yeah.
Now I'm outraged. This is not what was meant to happen.
I'm outraged that you're outraged.
Yeah.
It seems like the most popular thing at the moment that I do is the work is shit type.
I'm shocked to find there's no audience for this.
Infinitely demoralizing. I just feel like, who was it from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Marvin, the sad android.
Yeah.
So maybe that's my destiny.
Sadness can sell. Yeah, I mean, look, articulating others' pain or frustrations is a valuable thing to do. If you can put it to words. I mean, my favorite brand of this is watching old Christopher Hitchens clips in debates, and you just see him. I certainly don't agree with all of his sentiments, but just ruthlessly and with sort of military precision take apart his opponents, and it just feels good to watch. It's just, yeah, catharsis.
Yeah, I saw one where somebody asked a question, and the way that everybody feels those questions is say, "Well, that's a really good question," and he said that that's just an extraordinarily, stupid question. Yeah, so, it all went downhill from there.
Yeah, he didn't mince his words, that's for sure. I think he was on, maybe it was he was being the Sean Hannity once for one clip, and he says something. They get 3 minutes into the interview, and it's off the back of his book around God's existence, and he says to Sean Hannity something to the effect of, "You really speak as though as someone who's never engaged with a position other than your own. Like you've never even looked the basic arguments against your position." Yeah.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah. Don't I know
What would you like the impact of your work to be, though, Jack? I mean, your kind of work in terms of what you're doing online, and cringe at the question. If all you like, I'm still going to ask it.
Fortune and fame, baby.
Yeah,
all the way.
Celebrity
Raking that
philosopher.
philosophy money. Make people think, I guess, which is a sort of a bit of a platitude. I think that there's too much certainty people have in a lot of their views, which goes unchallenged. So I think if I can make people a little bit more skeptical of their viewpoint, or at least have the idea that, okay, there are other ways of thinking which aren't incredibly stupid, because I think a lot of the ways in which people engage with views outside of their echo chamber is this outrage stuff. They'll either see stuff that viscerally they agree with, which dunks on the stupidest, worst possible version of a position they disagree with, and they watch it and they feel really good because they go, yeah, I'm not stupid like that person who thinks that thing. Or with the outrage, they'll see the extreme dumb view on its own, a creator espousing it, and they'll be like, this represents this entire group. But if I can get two strong versions of different positions in a video and say, look, okay, you may not change your mind, but there are perhaps good reasons to have a different point of view, and maybe here are some flaws in your own thinking, which may not be enough for you to change your mind, but something for you to consider. Then that I feel like I've done my job, at least with most of my videos, at least the dialogue based ones. So,
and if I was Socratic and I said, like, but why? Are we just projecting here? Is it like we want other people to think because we think?
Maybe. I think if I would probably say something like too much certainty is part of the causes of a lot of the outrage and societal ills we have. I think that having a certain level of epistemic humility, skepticism is helpful for getting along with people, to be honest. The sense that other people may know stuff you don't. And there are some great essays that touch on this. One of my favorite writers, Tim Kreider, he has an essay in a collection where the essay is just called "When They're Not Assholes." And he talks about basically people who he was Democrat, I presume still is, and he's talking about during the Bush administration, but basically he's talking about people who he viscerally disagrees with, but finding out they're really good people, the sort of struggle with coming to terms with that. And so, I think, if Socrates or if anyone was to inquire in that way, I don't think I could get much beyond. I think it's good. I think it's helpful. I don't think, maybe, do I want more people to think in general, but not about everything? I've always been quite reluctant to sort of, what's a good way of putting it? Sort of throw random bits of knowledge that I find interesting on other people unwittingly if they didn't ask for it. So I think there's a difference between asking questions and prompting someone to think about something they hold a view on versus saying, hey, did you know that trains work this way? I don't want to do that, even if I'm fascinated by that, unless they ask, in which case obviously happy to wax.
You like trains?
No, not particularly, but I have no interest.
Yeah, I have a similar kind of spin on that, I think, which is, it's not just the thinking per se. It's I like people to be able to take different perspectives, because I do personally, I've benefited greatly from diversity in my life, and it's great to give people that. Nietzsche calls it like dance, but that intellectual kind of fluidity, really, the ability to consider other perspectives, and so not just a purely intellectual pursuit, but an openness, I guess. Yeah. What do you think, Charlie?
What do I think? Well, I was actually going to ask Jack, how much are you drawn into the politics side of the debate at the moment? Because I imagine that's a rich vein of outrage to mine.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I am. I'm certainly drawn. I think I consume a lot more of it than I make videos about, or at least the ratio's a bit off in that way. Want to get involved more in general, but I think I'm hesitant because I try and think about ways in which can actually be helpful. And sometimes when I've thrown my hat in the ring, I've thought to myself afterwards, oh, I'm not sure that was quite useful in the end. I did a video following Charlie Kirk's assassination where I basically said, hey, this is not someone I ever agree with, because I'll give a bit more context. I saw the headline that he'd been shot. This is someone who I'd been aware of for many years because I'd sort of followed US politics for a long time since university, and he was a pundit that I was aware of just because I was active on social media and had seen him debate several times. So online, I should say. So he'd been shot, saw the clip on Twitter, thought he's probably dead. And then I saw a lot of people who I respect and follow actively celebrating his death. And I thought to myself, I'm not sure this is a big win. I think it's quite bad because the same thing if this now becomes the political norm where AOC or Bernie Sanders is shot at the next speech, this gets pretty ugly pretty quickly. So I made what I thought was a fairly milquetoast, lukewarm take where I went, this is not someone I agree with, but I think this is bad for America, essentially. I think this is, ultimately this guy was not actively oppressing anyone. I called him a commentator, and it got a lot of views, but I got a lot of hate for it. I got a lot of flack, and people saying, ultimately, and I ended up taking the video down because I think not that my view changed, but the way I characterized him as a commentator was incomplete in that it sounded like evidence that I wasn't aware of when I made the video came out, that his group, Turning Point USA, had been involved in actively what's the word? Sort of not boycotting, but harassing African Americans and Black people who were working in university settings, and so they had like a huge active racial discriminatory element, which was well evidenced. And lots of people came out and went, okay, this guy was a little bit more than just a commentator, so that's sort of misinformation. All this to say, this anecdote sort of taught me that. And then I saw all these different views come in, and I thought, well, no one's really changed their minds, I don't think. I got a couple of messages saying that, this helps sort of ground opinions, but I think far more, it just caused more outrage and caused more division. So I thought, okay, well, what was the point of this? That's a very long-winded answer. So yeah, I would like to, but it's about what would be useful in the end. I'm
a bit worried. I suppose I do listen to a lot of history stuff. Listening to a lot about the First and Second World War at the moment. And I suppose one of the questions I've got is, at what point does it switch into that violence, kind of us versus them, dehumanizing the other group, atrocities start to happen? This was, to your point, felt like a step towards that. But I guess it's something that will kind of, as America as a society or Britain as a society, will sleepwalk into. And in retrospect, it will seem obvious it was going to happen. But what is the...
That's the question, right? And so the counter argument to my point, which lots of people messaged me directly and I saw online, where they said, look, these white liberals don't get it, that when the system enacts violence on you, violence is your only recourse. It's really easy for a white liberal such as yourself to say, hey, non-violence is the way, we abhor political violence, but political violence is the norm for a lot of groups in America on a daily basis. There's systemic violence. And these people don't get the options to participate in democracy and society in the same way that you do. And so for you to come out and say, oh, don't be violent, for these people, violence is the norm. And so actually political violence, as it's already been established for them, using this as a weapon against someone who actively this notion came out of Charlie Kirk was a stochastic terrorist, as essentially his rhetoric increased the likelihood that harm would be caused to the people who he discriminated against, that this was justified in a sense, and that we are already at that point. My response to that is that, and then they, obviously they would say, you're very privileged to have this take. My response to that is to say, is it not the height of privilege to go the other way and say, yes, now is the time for violence, to call for violence in a country I don't live in a war that I won't be fighting because I'm over in the UK. And then I thought to myself, well, why am I even talking about this in the first place? So I made a follow-up video where I said, look, I think if the option for peace or de-escalation exists, that's the preferred option, because I think there is a sense in which there's a market for people online, particularly on TikTok, maybe on Instagram as well, to play revolutionary from behind a TikTok camera, to sort of say, we're going to establish a sort of Marxist society, and these people probably are doing that because it's a certain sense of catharsis and cosplay. But I also think that's also quite damaging, because going, all right, do you really know what you're saying here? Because like revolutions are, if you read any history, seldom very peaceful. Lots of people die even just from infrastructure collapse, right? Let alone like fighting and shots. But anyway. So all this, so I get that, and I think it's similar to the idea of if you could tell the future of when to buy certain stocks or when the market's going to peak, you'd be a billionaire. If you knew when the moment in history was whereby, right, time for talk is over, descended this far into authoritarianism, time to go at arms, we're going to storm the Capitol again. But this time on the other side, hopefully. Then, I think you'd be you possess inhuman capabilities. So I don't know when that moment is. And then everything I'm saying right now is partly why I took these videos down and why I've been reluctant to make certainly on US politics, any content on US politics since. It's just because there are so many unknown questions. And do you accelerate towards civil war? Is it already past that point? I don't know. And to try and shift the needle any one way when I don't have the answer to those questions seems like a misuse of whatever platform I have.
Yeah, I think I have so many emotional reactions to that, because I've got to share many of those sentiments, and for the same reasons I don't make very much political content despite having strong feelings about it. And I think growing up, that debate was brought into sharp focus by friends who, in particular, my best friend at the time was an Ugandan, and he was saying, I know you sort of white liberals tend to lionize Martin Luther King, but he set back the course of racial equality by maybe 30 years, because his approach was always about compromise and nonviolence, whereas Malcolm X was about by any means necessary. So, violence was justified. And I thought your video was very powerful. And I almost think, well, there's an argument for, if it feels, edgy, maybe that's the difference you're making. And I was struck by it. It altered my opinion. I also read the comments. There was somebody in the comments who said something like, well, when has political change or when have rights or something really been brought about without violence? And I thought, it was a good question. I went off and researched it. And I mean, suffragettes was kind of the obvious example. And then there's a link through to the connection between men and violence, which is often unspoken in that. We talk about violence as if it's, something where we don't have any agency, but actually a lot of the problems are caused by, and who was it? Barack Obama made this point, by, old, men clinging on to kind of power. And it's probably interesting that one of the, biggest political changes was brought about by women. And so I think there's that extent to which it's very hard to, disconnect the debate around violence from the debate around maleness. But of course, that's a very incendiary topic. I sometimes try and talk about that and immediately get sort of shouted down as being, what do they call it? There's this expression used to shame guys who talk in support of women. But anyway, it's really tough to navigate those strong feelings and allegiances that exist.
But you're both more thoughtful and self-aware than, let's say, the kind of person who doesn't give a shit basically and just posts regularly all this outrageous content, either on the kind of left or the right. Being a kind of moral neutrality, can't even say it, being morally neutral in the debate and trying to bring balance, maybe it also doesn't help.
Well, yeah, I mean, so they would say if you're not fighting the oppressor, you're on the side of the oppressor. So if you're neutral in a time where people are being actively oppressed and you're not taking moves to stop that, or at least speaking out against it, then you're just as bad. So being a Switzerland is not a virtue in this case. So there's no place you can stand, and nor with it. But if your motivation was purely to appease everyone and sort of not to stir up any criticism, there's no move you can make, because even not speaking is seen as the omission of speech is criticized. Yeah. So and I guess I would rather not say something, fail to say something right than say something actively wrong. So if I'm going to make a sin or make a mistake, that's the mistake I'd rather make. And it's also difficult, I think, because there's a sense in which, Nick, to build off what you said, again, I agree with that. One, probably different people need to hear different
It's fine. I like the fact that you use the expression "move the needle." When I was at BP, I used to hear senior leaders constantly talk about moving the dial, and it took me a few times to realize it was like, wait, nobody moves the flipping dial. The whole point of the dial is the dial doesn't move. You will still hear.
Got to move the dial on the dashboard. I want it on the left now.
It's going to move the dial. It's cheating the system. Maybe it is moving the dial.
Yeah. Should we? I'd be interested to hear more about the stuff because Nick gave me a brief intro to you, Jack, before you joined.
Yeah, completely misrepresented you, Jack.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad I came in afterwards.
And the short story was he said something about like you're kind of doing some sales, but in a kind of quantum realm. So it'd be good to understand before.
Yeah, so my last big gig was at a quantum computing startup. So my undergrad was in physics. I did a master's in the philosophy of physics. That sort of background which helped me get that job. I've worked a few jobs in cybersecurity, and then someone who I'd met in my first grad job told me about a startup he was working on a few years ago that was based out of Switzerland, but they were trying to expand to a UK office. And one of the things they were working on was trying to commercialize a technology around quantum security. And I can talk more about that if that doesn't mean anything. And so I said, yeah, that sounds really cool because it's a combination of both physics, which I know something about, and cybersecurity, which I know something about. And I was there for a couple of years. The last year I've been working at a Norwegian cybersecurity firm, not really doing any quantum stuff. I sort of got out of that startup for a variety of reasons, but most of them were, it was a total lack of integrity on the part of the business owners. Yeah, no, I mean, it was fun. And there were certainly some very smart people there and some interesting research. So I have some strong opinions on that field, if you'd like to.
Yeah, I would like to. I would like to hear that. Obviously, the stuff that most people will know about is, let's say, Jaguar Land Rover most recently, and there's plenty of other examples. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear let's just say where things are in that space, because my assumption is that AI is making it even more difficult to control, I suppose, who can access your stuff. So yeah, where are things at?
So for quantum security in particular, so quantum computers, we know they work. The small ones have been built that have done things like factorize 21 or 15 into its prime constituents. It's very impressive. And I think right now it's an industry that's entirely sustained by VC hype. So they need to make claims that are bold and ambitious and saying that quantum computing is right around the corner in order to keep getting money, in order to keep making developments. And eventually one of them is going to be right. If a sufficiently large quantum computer was built, it would certainly have some incredible commercial applications, but probably also military, frankly, and security implications. The quantum computer is basically one that can do a certain type of calculation very, very quickly, much faster than a classical computer. And one of these things, one of these kinds of problems that we know it can do quite well, which is to do with integer factorization, is one of the underlying math problems which enforces encryption. So encryption mostly just works because it would take a computer a really long time to break it. A computer could break it if you got a spare 10 million years, but until that time, your data is secure. So what I was working on is there are lots of people who anticipating that quantum computers in the most bullish predictions will be here in sort of 5-10 years. Then can the poison also be the cure? Are there some aspects that we can leverage that will mean that data transfer or encryption is not only classical computer proof, but also quantum computer proof? Personally, I think that outside of this risk called the store now, decrypt later risk, which is a long way of saying that people are trying this thing whereby they're stealing encrypted data, which is currently useless because you can't decrypt it, in the hopes that a quantum computer will become available within 10, 15 years, decrypt it then. And if that data that you've stolen is still relevant or sensitive in 20, 25 years, that's a successful theft. So if you're using the same bank account in 20 years' time, then yeah. That I think is worth mitigating against, but the ways to mitigate against it are really coming about. There's an organization called NIST that are looking into different ways of encrypting data, and there are a few different candidates for how to do that. So really, for most organizations, what that involves is just staying on top of patching, because it's kind of happening anyway. It's like a software level intervention as opposed to some fancy hardware. Everything else, I don't think is worth the investment right now for organizations, especially if you look at the sort of spectrum of cybersecurity risks. You've got phishing emails, you've got man-in-the-middle attacks, you've got human, like social engineering. Encryption breaking doesn't even arrive on the list. And what happens within organizations is that they're always having to justify cybersecurity budgets because it doesn't improve P&L. And it's kind of an interesting problem, right? Because you can double your cybersecurity budget and still get hacked, or you can halve it and not get hacked. There's no guarantees. So it's a very valid question to say, how much should we spend on this, and in what order should we address the problems? I think the most logical one is to say, what are the most common problems for our industry? Let's do it proportionally to those, right? That's a fairly decent bet. And if you're doing that, quantum encryption breaking is not going to arrive on the list. Like, it would be negligent to spend money on that. Sorry, it's a very long-winded way of giving some of my views on that. So I don't think anyone's at any risk of being hacked by a quantum computer anytime soon, unless, of course, there's some government developments we're not privy to, which are being used for some sort of international espionage or cyber warfare. But if there's something like that going on, I'm not aware of it.
It's interesting. I saw Google's announcement of a kind of a quantum chip. I don't know how it plays into that timeline, but my experience of talking to people who are doing cybersecurity sort of systems admin for medium-sized organization is that they don't have that kind of level of security anxiety, but day to day what they're doing, as you say, Jack, is just kind of patching things. And that there's been this sort of uptick, an exponential uptick in exploits. So with new systems, new software, and this constant things, and it's going to become increasingly difficult for anybody to keep on top of that. And so it seems to be one of those worlds where it is again pointing in the direction of, well, you need AI. The only way you're going to keep on top of this ever accelerating mix of attack types and formats is you've got to have your defensive AI and you've got to have your combative AI, attacking AI. And again, I think that sort of worries me a little bit, because you can see people ceding, capability and intelligence and control to a system to do the job which hitherto kind of human beings had done. What do you have a view on that, Jack?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, again, it sort of depends on what we mean by AI. So machine learning has been used by some vendors for a very long time. The volume of data has for a long time been far in excess of what a human can analyze when it comes to different cybersecurity systems. So you're right in that the attack surface perimeter of an organization seems to only be expanding with new tools and new technologies that are necessary for staying competitive in a market. This is one of the reasons why I think cybersecurity enjoys a certain sense of longevity, because every new innovation sort of creates more work for cybersecurity in general. And even with the use of LLMs, because they can be exploited, and there are certain ways, I'm sure everyone on this has looked into weird prompts you can use to get ChatGPT to spit out training data and stuff like that. So in one of the markets in which I work in right now, called the managed defense and response market, which is essentially using humans to triage and investigate alerts on behalf of an organization. So not every organization builds its own security team or to work in tandem harmoniously with an organization's security team. At one of the last biggest cybersecurity expos this year in America, there were 50 companies, startups, that were trying to build an entirely AI version of this industry. And so usually this is started by humans. They're saying we're going to do this entirely with AI. Now, the pro of that is that if you can do a service which doesn't require humans, it's obviously generally a bit cheaper. And for companies, it's saying, say the human one is 99% effective, AI is 95%, but if the AI 95% is only 10% the cost, limited budget, maybe. Do I think it's bad? Yeah, I think what will probably happen is there'll be an instance whereby an AI defense system makes choice which is catastrophically the wrong choice, and makes that choice 1,000 times in a tenth of a second, and causes more damage than a human would have done. And that'll dissuade some organizations from using humans, but it'll also not deter others who are more budget conscious. Unfortunately, security triage, it can require a lot of skill and a lot of intuition and a lot of business context to make effective decisions. And so, yeah, there will be a decay of human capabilities, but there will also be some organizations who just absolutely refuse to cede that territory to AI systems. But I think it's different from, say, what I worry about when people are using AI to summarize books or articles, because the cybersecurity triage is a very sort of niche field. And yeah, I think we're going to suffer the issue of just like entry-level jobs that many other industries suffer. But in the scale of sort of cognitive decay problems caused by AI, I don't see it as like one of the bigger ones, because we just because of the volume of data, you're going to need to use something to buff out your arsenal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I wondered, you just put me in mind of, there was a critique I saw of a genre of movie, and they were basically saying that people love these movies like, The Equalizer or, whatever, because they imagine this lone person who goes up against a corrupt system and corrects it. And the critique was basically, we fall in love with that fantasy that us as an individual could change the world, whereas the reality is that almost never happens, because the organizations win, the institutions, the organizations win. But obviously you might be familiar with Mr. Robot, the series, and that fantasy seems a little bit closer to being realized with somebody who can, make use of artificial intelligence or cyber attack approaches, and who could effectively like redistribute, let's say the Robin Hood scenario, redistribute wealth from a major financial organization that's corrupt to, somewhere else in the world. What are your thoughts on affecting change in that way? Is that something that you would be tempted by if you had the skills? I'm just going to.
If I was competent enough, would I? Yeah. So these individuals exist. I think I can't remember the individual's name. I'm not sure if it was published, but there was I think it was a teenager who used an Amazon Fire Stick to hack into AWS when he was sort of locked up in a hotel room. Like, there are people out there who, even lacking AI, possess extraordinary capabilities to get through systems. You're right. AI is going to mean that the sort of the base level competence that you need to do sort of annoying, sometimes very effective attacks to systems is going to decrease. And so, more business for us, I guess. Would I be tempted if I had that level of competence? I think it depends on the specific organization. Like, I think there are, and it's the long-term consequences thing. Like, I think if I was speaking to some leftist friends of mine, they might say, okay, well, let's go after X, let's go after Amazon or something like that. But then, if Amazon, as people saw last week, because there was a bit of an AWS problem caused by a DNS server, hosts so many different systems and so many different things are reliant on it. And it's really hard to know the long chain of events that's going to occur from taking down a system like that. I imagine with X, if you took it down, like, a lot of people, I'm sure, would celebrate because it's become a bit of a cesspit. But equally, it's hard to know these long-term consequences. So I think perhaps I have the same disposition as I do with sort of making political content in that way. I just realized as I'm speaking about it, I'd definitely be tempted to poke around and learn, for sure, and I could maybe gain more of an insight. And maybe you could even argue that if you had that sort of capability, you'd have a moral obligation to do something like that for certain things. But I think it gets pretty shady pretty quickly when someone's acting on that scale. And this is going to be a weird transition. Have either of you read or watched Death Note?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of similar, right? That's someone who had a capability that could sort of interfere on a systemic governmental level. And unfortunately, the protagonist had a vision of justice, which was laws are always right. Anyone who breaks them is always wrong. But you can imagine a version of that story where they went after systemic issues and really targeted people in governments or in positions of power. I think that would be a really interesting thought experiment to see what would happen in that instance if we had some sort of like all-powerful hacker who could attack infrastructure in this way.
Well, isn't that a quantum problem? What's the best universe we could live in? You just set the computer to work figuring that one out.
Yeah. It would just tell you you're not in it, I think, unfortunately. But there are so many, that notion of parallel universes. I've stitched a video on TikTok. It's in drafts because I'm not sure, because I got rage baited. I saw a video with 7 million views, 1.3 million likes. This creator, it's like this video was designed to piss me off. The headline of the video was "Everything I learned about quantum physics in 60 seconds." The video is 3 minutes long, so right out the gate, it's like a lie, right? And then then I think the first utterance is something to the effect of, the universe aligns with your intentional energy field. You can quantum leap into the right reality. I'm sitting there going, this is 1.3 million likes, and the creators restricted comments, understandably, because if you scroll far enough down, someone goes, this has nothing to do with quantum physics. What are you talking about? Just going, no. So yeah.
Yeah. But there is a sadness. I share that sort of sadness about social media, that the popularity of stuff is things that resonate with people. And emotionally, it's quite appealing to think that you can understand everything about quantum physics in 60 seconds. And so it just becomes, and then people consume that sort of stuff voraciously. Same with astrology, I think. It's like catnip. For people, it's unstoppable.
I think it's identity affirming content. I think it's the same as motivational stuff, which is it can serve an educational purpose or a learning purpose and be a sort of taster for someone to go learn more about. But I think it's more about being, you think to yourself while watching, I'm the kind of person who watches this, therefore I am this. I'm the kind of person who watches this motivation content. Oh yeah, I'm a hustle, grind set. Oh, I'm the kind of person who watches quantum physics videos. I'm so smart. So I think I imagine that's part of the appeal, but it's patient-led medicine, right? Rather than doctor-led medicine. And that sucks.
Yeah, and I've sort of see that a bit, I think, with philosophy, which is that I try to do a lot of philosophy, which is just kind of demystifying and plain speaking. And part of what I see as a reaction is I don't want it plain speaking. I want it to feel complex and inscrutable, because it's like that's why I'm here, to feel like I'm grappling with something which is unsolvable and profound. And so use more long words, Nick. And that I find is always very kind of like weird.
Make it verbose. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, would you guys be tempted if you had super hacking abilities to or how would you guys manage that, the burden of that capability?
What do you think, Charlie?
Seems too risky. Well, actually, I was thinking about Catch Me If You Can, if you've seen that film, where basically if you commit fraud at a really kind of expert level, if you hack something that's extremely difficult to hack, what happens is you get caught and then they go, can you come and work for us because you're really good? So actually it's like a consequenceless crime in some ways.
But what about, let's set it in a historical context, Charlie, because I think it's comparable. What if you could go back in history, given your interest in kind of World War II, and just sort of dispatch our young German painter? Would you take that choice, or would you be worried that the world could turn out even worse?
Well, yeah, I guess it's come back to that earlier conversation we were having about the person who got unalived, which was does taking out somebody that's driving society in a certain direction actually take the issue away, or does it create different problems? I suppose the answer to that is probably wouldn't, just because you'd never know how bad it could go in a different direction. Was that painter the worst version of that idea? I don't know.
One of my favorite memes I've seen online is there's a meme of someone where it said, like, you're getting really bored in art history class studying this painter, so you get a time machine to go back and stop them from getting into art school. You return your present time and you go, oh no, what have I done? Oh god.
Yeah. What about you?
But I guess also the flip side to that is it is very easy to talk yourself into inaction. And so there's an extent to which I think you have to try and do the right thing, which is kind of the Spike Lee film, brilliant film, by the way, if you haven't seen it, Do the Right Thing, which is just how incredibly complex that is to actually, do the right thing, although it sounds like straightforward advice.
I think you can only play what's in front of you. That's the way I think about it, which is like, I can be a good person in what I experience on a day-to-day basis. I can give money to charity. I can, help out somebody who needs it in my life. There are bigger issues that I can get involved in some way, but I think the idea that I'm somehow gonna, be John Wick and take down this the system is probably a bit far-fetched.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have run out of time. We covered a lot of ground there. I don't know if this podcast is going to make it to the airwaves, given the topics we've covered, but I really hope it does.
Really? Was it that controversial?
That was yeah, exactly. I don't know. We did have a note from Spotify for the previous podcast we had saying that the music that we used had been bought by
Excuse me while I play some Doja Cat to lead us out. Give me a moment.
Yeah, that's okay. So, but yeah, we'll see. But I really appreciate your time, Jack.
This is cool, Charlie.
Wonderful time.
Would love to chat again.
Yeah, exactly. And thanks again, Nick. Well, I'll catch you again next time where we will have Nusha.
Nusha, that's good. So it's not the Top Gear, format on repeat.
We have only had middle-aged white men so far, Jack.
I'll be Captain Slow.
Sure
I don't know. It depends. I don't know how old Jack is. I don't know.
I'm hoping to get to middle age soon enough. So yeah, I'm going as fast as I can. I can assure you. Lifestyle tick.
Yeah.
I just need a few more years on the clock.
Hashtag goals.
Yeah. Trying to move the needle. So,
yeah. Cheers, Charlie.
Right,
I don't think when you look back on it, I don't think we've said anything that's too, I don't know.
No.
Too controversial, but we'll see. But yeah, that's all.
Let the algorithms decide.
Gets the people going.
Yeah.
Outrage.
This is actually part of our outrage ploy. We didn't say anything controversial. If you're upset, it's your fault. If you feel bad, it's because you're wrong.
Thanks, Charlie.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Bye now.
Cheers, Jack.
Bye.
Bye.